Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest, and that's going to be Andy Swan. He's the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us here today, Andy. We've got a discussion. So we talked about price pressures and supply constraints and everything else. But the housing market, right? We've got two companies here, Home Depot and Lowe's, that are the two-headed monster in this particular space. They've had good runs so far this year, up about 25 to 30% for both of these stocks. But what are you guys seeing as far as data goes? Because home prices are at record levels. They're not coming down, but we've got interest rates rising also.
Yeah, home prices aren't coming down. The customers, individuals' desire to renovate their homes definitely coming down a little bit here. It's really hard to match what happened in 2020 where, we were all staring at the walls of our homes and thinking about how things could be better and taking action on that with low interest rates and stimulus money coming in. But you can see home renovation trend down 25% year over year. But what's really interesting about this for us is the idea of hiring a contractor being up 22%. So we've kind of moved on from the phase of do it yourself as consumers and into the phase of, okay, that's a great idea for a project, but I don't want to do it myself, or I'm not competent enough to do it myself. And I don't want to deal with the supply chain issues that I'm seeing in the marketplace. And so people are turning to contractors for professional work more and more. And when you really look at Home Depot and Lowe's as comparisons against each other, really Home Depot's much better positioned to take advantage of the move to contractors. Their contractor business, their professional unit is significantly more profitable and more attractive to contractors than that of Lowe's. And so we think when we start comparing these two companies, they all kind of go along with each other a lot. You can see on the stock chart there, you can see how these two move together. But what's going to separate them, we think, is Home Depot's ability to service that contractor segment of the population, whereas Lowe's is much more reliant on do-it-yourself home improvement.
Yeah, Andy, I think you're touching on the right subject here with Home Depot and Lowe's, and that is the relationship between Home Depot and contractors, right? They've carved out a niche. They even have a different exit and entrance. Did you know that? Did you notice that for like contractors to move bigger equipment out? And I read an article this morning, Andy, the average American home is 38 years old. Now, I've got a home that we rehabbed in 2014, so it's 7 years old. And I can say that the things that need to be upgraded or fixed seems like it's everything needs to be upgraded or fixed in terms of painting or something. So, Home Depot had a great run. Tom mentioned that to begin the segment, but they also had some downgrades lately. But I think people are underestimating the staying power of this redo your home, and those home prices, Andy, that you just mentioned are the reason where people are staying in their homes and redoing their homes. And the relationship that, you're right, do it yourself is a great idea until you screw it up and you got to bring someone in to fix everything that you tried to do, Andy. So your thoughts on who's doing it better, correctly better, I guess is what I'm saying. Is it Home Depot or Lowe's? If this is a two-horse race, it seems like Home Depot's the dominant player here.
Yeah, I really think they are. I really think that the idea of people moving to, a lot more contractor-friendly projects. So, Home Depot said that kitchen, bath, and lumber were their strongest departments, which that's harder stuff for people to take on themselves than painting a wall or that kind of thing. Whereas Lowe's is talking about, indoor, outdoor garden, that sort of thing, painting. Those are the things that people do it yourself. So when you start thinking about moving forward, which is what LikeFolio always tries to do, tap into the consciousness of the consumer. If the consumer is getting to those projects now because they bought a house last year or for whatever reason they put it off, that require a contractor, then that naturally lends itself to a Home Depot purchase rather than a Lowe's purchase, where I think the two were neck and neck when it was do-it-yourself in 2020. We could see some divergence between the two moving forward.
Yeah, and Andy, if you take a look at this, I mean, I live in Chicago, and just finding a contractor to do anything for me, whether it's painting, whether it's adding on to something or redoing a room, you just can't find them, right? That's part of the problem, I think, is that there's scarcity of it, and with people taking on bigger projects because home inventory the inventory levels are so low right now. You might as well fix up the place you've got, right? And going into that, if you look at Home Depot versus Lowe's, they're the dominant player in the pro aspect as opposed to the do-it-yourself, just like you stated. But does this mean that they can extend their growth, which has been over double digits in both companies, or is it one taking the lead, or do you expect the stocks just to kind of meld together like they have over the last year?
No, if I were going to guess, I would expect Home Depot to outperform Lowe's. This is the first time I've said that in a while. We've always thought of them as kind of together, but I do think that Home Depot could outperform Lowe's simply because of this shift. And Lowe's is trying to get into this game. Lowe's is trying to get into the professional services, meeting the contractors, but that's a tough hill to climb because, like you said, those guys are busy. They have very little extra time to change their ways. So it's a really tough time to try to get them over unless you have some sort of supply chain advantage over Home Depot, which I really don't think Lowe's does. So when we look at this, I do think Home Depot outperforms Lowe's over the next year or so, simply because of the way the consumer's acting. But whether both of them are up or down a year from now is a tougher call. I think it's easier to pit Home Depot against Lowe's right now than it is to predict how the two stocks will perform overall. So from a trader's type of perspective, I would be thinking pair trade or something like that.
All right, I like that discussion here, Andy, and I think demand will continue to be pretty robust for these both of these companies, especially heading into winter up here in Chicago. I'm in the mix for a snowblower at this point, so I might be stopping by Home Depot. We'll have to wait and see. All right, Andy, thank you so much for joining us here today for this discussion. It's Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, but Kevin